Good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock. We will get started very shortly. I know we've got a large list of attendees, and so we want to give folks just a minute or two to join us. But as we're getting started, just a couple things just to help facilitate today's webinar. If you are not currently muted, please mute yourself so that there won't be any noise distractions. We will have you give you an opportunity at the end to unmute yourself so you can ask questions. But we will get started here shortly. Here it is 10 o'clock, and we do have a lot to cover. As we say in the world of immigration these days, there's always news to be shared with you all. So before I get started, I wanted to just make sure that you're in the right place. This morning, you are joining our Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Dubuque's Immigration Legal Services team. We are here to present and give you information on immigration updates. So hopefully you are in the right webinar and right Zoom meeting. Today, I'll be joined. My name is Zervang. I'm the Immigration Legal Director for our Immigration Legal Services team. And we're very lucky to have joined with me this morning Mary Matunes de Mayolo, who services our Waterloo office, and then also Jim Jacobson in our Cedar Rapids office. We here with the Immigration Legal Services team have 5 attorneys, including myself, and I'm going to give us a little bit of roadmap of what to expect this morning. This morning, what I'd like to make sure that you all are aware of, we've got a lot to cover, as I mentioned. And this is a roadmap to kind of give you information as to what to expect today. This morning, I'll share a little bit about our Immigration Legal Services program and the work that we do. And then we are going to dive right into immigration, the world of immigration, and starting off with some concepts, immigration words, so we're all working from the same foundation in terms of understanding words and concepts. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jim, and Jim will cover a summary of the latest slew of immigration actions, executive actions, and proclamations that were issued with the new Biden administration. And then we'll follow up with Miriam covering and providing an overview of the recently released U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Act of 2021 that's being proposed. And then we will also share with you, if you're interested, how to get involved and how to help immigrants and refugees in our community. And lastly, we'll have some time for you all to ask questions, and we'll also provide some resources if you're interested. Today's seminar and webinar is being recorded. And so if you have any concerns, feel free to send a question in the chat box. We will be using the chat box. If you have any questions throughout the presentations, please make sure to send a question in the chat box. I'll monitor that, but we will, as I mentioned, have time at the end of the presentation to answer any questions that you may have. So hopefully we'll cover a lot of information so that I think you'll feel that today's webinar is a worthwhile time for you. So just to start us off, a little bit about who we are, Catholic Charities. We have been in existence since 1931. This year is our 90th anniversary, and we serve 30 counties in Northeast Iowa. And our mission is really to respond to changing social needs and to be conveners of conversations. And our services are available to all persons in need, regardless of faith or background. Particularly today, we'll be highlighting the services offered by our Immigration Legal Services team. We also have several other programs that we provide through our Catholic Charities team, and I want to make sure that you all are aware of that. We have affordable housing in 3 of our cities in Northeast Iowa. We also provide mental health counseling. We also have a program called Jail and Prison Reentry Ministry. And then lastly, our ultimate founding goal is to really help reduce poverty for our residents in Northeast Iowa. So that's a nutshell of who we are as Catholic Charities. I also wanted to just share a little bit of a map of who we are in case you are interested. So we, as I mentioned, cover 30 counties in Northeast Iowa. And this is a map to show you all the counties that we are located in terms of our services that are provided. So if you want to look geographically, east of Interstate 35 and north of Highway 30 is oftentimes how I describe our coverage area. And so we are fortunate today. We've got over, I think, close to 130 people registered, and hopefully we've got a diverse group of folks that are joining us today. So I wanted to just share that we are going to be talking about terminologies that may be familiar with some of you, but may not be so familiar with some of you. So we'll make sure to kind of keep a nice even keel balance. Specifically, what we do with our immigration legal services. We provide affordable, high quality services for individuals and families needing help with immigration cases. And I want to stress and highlight that our consultations are free. Contact our office and we will discuss with you what your immigration needs are, and we will be able to schedule you or an individual that you're helping with to get a consultation with one of our legal staff member. And to give you an idea of the type of work that we provide help with, we provide help and are targeted working with family-based immigration. Well, what is family-based immigration? Family-based immigration includes some of these that are on the slide. Asylum, helping people apply for or navigate through the asylum process, helping individuals who want to become a citizen and apply for through the naturalization process. And then we also assist folks who are our dreamers, our young folks who came here and want to be able to apply for work authorization and not be under the radar of potentially deportation. We also assist individuals who want to apply for their green cards. And then a large portion of the work that we do is really family-based reunification. Our goal and our mission with our ILS program and immigration program is really to reunify and keep families together. So a bulk of the work we do is family-based reunification by helping individuals petition or sponsor family members abroad to be reunited here in the United States. Another segment of our work that we are uniquely situated is to help a segment of what we call the unaccompanied minors or youth who traveled here either by themselves or with a parent, and to seek for a pathway to legalization through that process. And then, of course, we also provide assistance and legal representation to individuals who may be victims of crime, whether it's sexual assault, domestic violence, through these other two avenues, through the VAWA petition, youth non-immigrant crime victim visa, and trafficking. So this is just to give you a description of some examples of the work that we do. This is not all inclusive. We also have a huge segment of the work that we do, which is mostly removal and deportation defense work, specifically for individuals who may find themselves before immigration court. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about why words matter. And I wanted to share, before we dive in, I think it's really important for us to understand and have a common understanding of certain terminologies and definitions. And the reason why we believe words matter is particularly in the work that we do. I want to explain who are undocumented non-citizens or undocumented immigrants. We would like to encourage folks to avoid using the term, quote, illegal aliens. And the reason why is we want you to understand why undocumented non-citizens are the best terminology for us to use. And how someone becomes undocumented generally are these two ways. One, an individual may have entered the United States legally with a visa and overstayed their period of authorization, which in this case would be, again, an administrative immigration violation, not a crime. Okay. Another way in which someone may become an undocumented non-citizen in the United States is what we call EWIS, and that's an acronym. And apologies, and we'll make sure that we explain acronyms that we use. EWIS, or entry without inspection. These are folks who entered the United States to settle, but did not enter with valid authorization or valid documentation. Okay. And again, entry without inspection is a misdemeanor under our federal immigration law. Let's talk a little bit of a couple other terminologies. Let's talk about what does it mean when we use the term immigrant. When we use the term immigrant, this is a really broad encompassing term to define individuals who are in the United States that are not citizens but want to make the United States a permanent home, right? So this includes individuals who we mentioned that are undocumented, okay? Lawful permanent residents, or LPRs, or you may also hear the term green card holders. These are individuals who've been granted legal permission to work and live in the United States without restrictions. They can travel outside the United States and re-enter. But as a caveat, individuals who hold this status, that status can be revoked or terminated if they violate the terms of immigration law. Okay. Another term recently we've been hearing people use is the term migrant. This term is generally for individuals who make a voluntary decision to leave his or her country of origin, either for temporary purposes or permanently, to seek better opportunities for their personal convenience, and generally without intervention of external compelling factors. Now, this term has been used interchangeably with immigrants or migrants, but we wanted to make sure to identify this so that we all are using the right terminology. Okay. To continue with that, I just wanted to share a couple other terminologies in the next slide, which is the terminology for refugees. Refugee is a terminology to describe a person who is abroad that's seeking entry into the United States because they are seeking protection due to persecution based on race, religion, nationality, membership, and membership in a particular social group or the political opinion, okay? As opposed to asylum seekers. Asylum seekers are individuals who are attempting to enter the US or already at our port of entry or physically in the United States, and then asking our federal government for protection due to the same grounds as those of refugee, okay? The other terminology you'll be hearing us talk about today is DACA. This is deferred action for young folks who enter the United States as children, generally under the age of 16, and they're granted a discretionary relief called deferred action from deportation and generally granted 2 years of work authorization, okay? And lastly, the terminology you'll also be hearing us say is US citizen, either by birth in the United States or through the naturalization process. So that's just to give you a brief overview of some terms that you may be hearing during today's presentation. I'm going to turn over to Jim now, and Jim's going to talk a little bit about the executive orders that have been issued recently. And Jim, can you just do a brief introduction of yourself before you dive into the executive orders?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Jacobson. I'm the newest immigration attorney here at Catholic Charities. I joined just about a year ago. Prior to this, I practiced labor law. But everybody here at Catholic Charities have been just wonderful and helped me get acclimated to a whole new world of law, and that's sort of my background. If people can't hear me, let me know. But otherwise, I'll just keep going. Executive actions. There are different types of executive actions. There's executive orders, there's presidential proclamations, and there's presidential memoranda. And there are subtle differences, but not anything we need to concern ourselves with here today. The previous administration undertook any number of executive orders dealing with immigration. And since January 21st or 20th, when President Biden was inaugurated, he has signed a raft of executive actions, proclamations, memoranda, and orders. And more than a dozen have to do with immigration specifically. And some of these executive orders basically reverse policies created by the previous administration, while others, and sometimes within the same executive action, require that officials with the administration look at what the previous administration did, what worked, what didn't work, and how to change them and improve the immigration system so that it works in a way that is humane and fits with the goals of the Biden administration. That is a list you're looking at right now of some of the executive actions that President Biden has taken since he took office. Seems like a long time ago, but it was only about a month ago. And so a lot has happened in a month. The orders and different presidential executive actions do a number of different things. You can read the list yourself, but among other things, they preserve and fortify DACA, which Zerg discussed briefly before. They review and likely dismantle the so-called Remain in Mexico policy, the migrant protection protocols that the previous administration created. They'll restore pathways to granting asylum, which has been severely curtailed in the last 4 years, and establishing a task force to reunite families who were separated at the border, removing roadblocks to refugee admissions, which have slowed to a trickle, as many of us know, terminate the national emergency that the so-called national emergency that served as the basis for President Trump's building and expanding the wall along the southern border, and his executive orders, executive actions lifted the travel ban from majority Muslim countries. Now, there are pros and cons to executive actions. The pros are that, as you can see, it allows a president to take action very quickly and assert the priorities and policy priorities of that administration. And they have the effect of law. And it circumvents the legislative process to some degree because, as many of us know, the making laws in this country is a slow, tedious, highly politicized, and sometimes non-existent process. But this is a way to get things jump-started. On the other side, the negative side, is that it's not a quick fix in the sense that it flips a switch. It doesn't. It's a quicker fix than trying to pass laws, but it's not. It doesn't immediately change the situation. It does in some instances, but not in others. Bureaucracies are like aircraft carriers. Changing their direction takes a while. And it took a while to get them moving in the direction that they're moving in. It's going to take a while to get them moving in another direction that's certainly more immigrant friendly. But so that's a challenge. I mean, everything, according to the George Mason Institute for Immigration Research, everything under the Trump administration was designed to set up and restrict immigration, see immigrants as a problem and a threat. And there's going to need to be time to revamp and rebuild the infrastructure and change the culture in some of these agencies. So there are quite a few, as you saw on that list. We're going to look at just some of them today and what they do. We're not going to look at all of them. If you are interested, the White House has a great website with the wording of each of these and what they do and so forth. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in reading what they actually say, to go to the White House's website. So, we'll look at a few of them today and what they do. Keep in mind that Donald Trump's executive orders, were subject to dozens of challenges. Some parts were tossed, some parts were upheld, so the landscape is fairly complicated, legally speaking. But what we're going to do is just look at what some of these are designed to do, what some of these actions will do. So, for instance, preserving and strengthening DACA, which was created in 2012. And I believe to date, some 800,000 people have taken advantage of the program. It's the deferred action so that they're not deported. They get work authorization and so forth. There are about almost 3,000, I believe, in Iowa who have taken advantage of the DACA program. This is a presidential memorandum, and what it does is it doesn't make any changes to what DACA was prior to 2017. It just says this is what it is. Now, the DACA was back and forth in the courts for the last 4 years. The Trump administration came in, declared it illegal, rescinded it. Ultimately, the Supreme Court said you can't do that based on your rationale for it. They said the rationale was arbitrary and capricious. They didn't reach the merits of whether or not DACA was okay, legally speaking, or not okay, legally speaking. They just said they couldn't do it the way they did it. And then an appeals court said, when the Trump administration sort of slow walked how they were going to implement it, another court told them that they had to do it the way it was written in 2012. This executive order does that as well, and gives the force of the administration to these agencies to do that. So, so that's all to the good, but it's not entirely without risk at this point. And there's a case pending. It's not smooth sailing for DACA. It doesn't seem like it ever is. That's why a legislative solution would be wonderful. But in the meantime, there's a case out of Texas, of course, where other and some other states are suing as well, attempting to have DACA declared unlawful and invalidated all the way back to 2012. As far as I know, last I checked, there was no decision. If somebody knows of a decision in that case, please let us all know. But so it's back. It's working the way it's supposed to work. Stay tuned. Other executive actions call for reviewing and reversing as necessary the ramped up enforcement put in place, immigration enforcement put in place in the last 4 years under the last administration. Previously, between 2017 and the beginning of 2021, the Donald Trump administration created policies that would arrest and deport anyone who had committed any act that counted as a chargeable criminal offense or was considered a threat to national security. And of course, their rules said that, well, we know that illegal entry is a misdemeanor, so that's a chargeable crime. So that places anybody who entered EWI, entered without inspection, potentially eligible for deportation. There was no prioritization. That was it. And immigrants were considered under the previous rules threat to national security. So for those two reasons, it just became much easier for ICE to throw out a dragnet and start deporting people. This executive action, as you know, included a 100-day pause of deportations nationwide. That was enjoined temporarily, oddly enough, by a judge in Texas. And it was yesterday, I believe, enjoined indefinitely by that same judge. So that 100-day pause on most deportations, there were still some that could take place, but for the most part. So that's been enjoined. But the good news is that agencies have a lot of discretion. So it doesn't mean that everything has to continue apace as it was under the previous administration. President Biden's executive actions call for a reunification task force that will identify and reunify children who are separated from their families at the border. At one point, I believe 5,000 children were separated from their parents or guardians. And there are still 600 who are not reunited with their families. So this executive order calls for what they're calling a reunification task force, which will identify those people, get them back together with their families, find ways potentially to allow them to stay in the United States, and get services to them to address the trauma that the zero tolerance policy had. the effect that it had on people, and probably lifetime effects. And so that that is what one of the executive actions does. Another one, very simply, wants to restore faith in our legal immigration system. Uh, and many people, I'm sure, have lost faith over time in whether this is a welcoming country for immigrants. And this order says, no, we're going to do what it takes uh, to do that by removing barriers that impede access to immigration, and rules and policies and so forth. So the executive action, the executive order calls for reviewing, revising, if necessary, if it's possible to just revise it or rescind those policies and rules that create impediments to legal immigration. Um, One of those you may have heard of is the public charge rule. And the public charge rule, without getting into the legal details, essentially, it's always been in the law, but the idea it became very punitive, that they expanded what public benefits someone could get that could potentially nullify their ability to immigrate. They required that people basically lay bare their finances in an extreme way, tons and tons of documentation to allow them to find a way not to let them not to let them rather adjust status. So also subject of many court challenges that went back and forth, and you could get whiplash trying to follow what happened with the public charge rule. But it went into effect essentially about a year ago. It remains in effect. In other words, if you're adjusting status, you still have to file this brutally onerous I-944 form. But it, it's likely that I would think that they'll find ways to revise and rescind that rule so that it's not so punitive in terms of becoming a public charge. And what that means is basically becoming dependent on public benefits, cash benefits. Another of President Biden's executive actions will look at the causes, the root causes of migration in North and Central America, so that people seeking asylum from those countries to the United States, that maybe we can address it before it becomes necessary for them to seek asylum in the United States, which is a very refreshing way to look at asylum seeking. In other words, instead of just changing the way we deal with asylum, which needs changing at the moment, but also addressing the root causes. The Trump administration passed something that was or had an executive order and series of rules that essentially became nicknamed the death to asylum rules. And this executive action will be looking at those death to asylum rules and figuring out how to keep them if they work, revise them or rescind them. But what did these death to asylum rules do? They made it harder for people to pass the credible fear test, which is the first barrier that somebody has to get over in order to to seek asylum in the United States, that they have a credible fear that if they're returned to their home country, that they will that they will be harmed. It let immigration judges deny asylum without hearing. It narrowed the definition of certain basic fundamental terms that somebody has to, that are used for someone to prove that they need asylum, like persecution. What's your political opinion? What social group do you belong to? And if you belong to, they narrowed it so that previously particular social groups, like people who opposed gangs or whatever, uh, uh, could no, or were victims of gang violence, were no longer eligible for asylum. So it restricted the kind of evidence they could even present, if they could present a case. Um, so I think we're a little behind on the slides, maybe. No, we're not. I'm sorry, we're not. But that's okay. This executive order will also terminate, or at least review and potentially terminate, the migrant protection protocols that remain in Mexico policy, which we discussed. Some 65,000 asylum seekers, not from Mexico, were sent back across the border to wait. They passed the credible fear test and then sent back across the border to wait for their opportunity for an asylum hearing, where they were potentially subject to extortion and robbery and rape and murder. And it slowed asylum to a trickle, if even that. So they're reviewing it right now, but it seems as if there's definite movement, and you can see some of the headlines here. But just recently, the administration announced that 25,000 people they're going to start processing who are in the program. They're not adding any new people to the migrant protection protocols. But for those who are currently under that program, they announced plans just recently to start processing some 25,000 of them to begin to get the process of seeking asylum and getting a hearing. I mean, that doesn't mean that all 25,000 will get asylum, but it certainly gives them due process, which is very important. The executive actions, there's an executive order to enhance refugee resettlement, to bump it up this year to 62,500, and next fiscal year to 125,000. Previously, the previous fiscal year, fiscal 2020, only 12,000 refugees came into the United States. So again, this will do is increase the number, but also the refugees, people seeking refuge in the United States from abroad, were subject to heightened scrutiny and very intense scrutiny by the administration. That will be rolled back under the executive order. So there won't be the same kind of data collection and sharing and ways to again create obstacles to immigration through the refugee program. I know I went through those really quickly. There's a lot to them. I recommend the White House's website, but these are going to jumpstart repairing the damage done to our immigration system over the last 4 years. And with that, I am finished, and I will turn it over back to Zur.
Great. Thank you, Jim, for that very thorough overview of the executive orders. I'm going to now turn it over to Miriam. Miriam will now cover an update or a summary of the proposed legislation known as the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. And so, Miriam, if you could just also provide a brief introduction for yourself before you dive into the act, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Miriam, I think you have to unmute yourself. So let me.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Miriam Antunes de Mayolo. I have been with Catholic Charities. It will be 3 years. I've been practicing immigration law it will be 21 years this year. So most of them were in private practice. So let's talk about this proposed legislation, the 2021 U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Act. This legislation contains everything that immigration lawyers dream to have for Christmas. It is amazing. It goes further than any prior bills. It goes further than the 2005 McCain-Kennedy bill, and the bill that was passed the Senate but failed in the House in 2013. So one of the first and important changes that this proposes is that to eliminate the word aliens to refer to people who are not from the United States. So as Zer said at the beginning of this presentation, words matter. And it does matter to refer to people as people. So this is very important. So this is one of the, it seems like a small change, but it is a change. Next slide, please, Megan. Thank you. The change that this new legislation proposes would legalize the 11 million people who are here undocumented. It will provide a path to citizenship. Now, a path to citizenship, does not mean that somebody can go from being undocumented to being a U.S. citizen. That is not true of this legislation, and it is not true of the system that we have now, and it has never been true. Usually people go from some kind of status, which is, being undocumented or being on some kind of legal temporary status, to having permanent residence, which we call, to refresh your memory from this morning's earlier explanation of terms, we call legal permanent resident status. And then once somebody has been a legal permanent resident for a number of years, then one can apply to become a citizen. This legislation creates another status, which is called lawful prospective immigrant status. And it would be applicable to people who had no status and were present in the US on January 1st of 2021. It would also apply to some people who were deported under Trump. And I will go more in detail about that later. But the requirements would be to show that the applicant has passed background checks, criminal checks. There are some fees to pay, payment of taxes and so forth. And this status is valid for 6 years unless it is revoked. And people who obtain this status will obtain something like a card that shows that they are prospective immigrants, and they will get a Social Security card, and they will be able to work and even to travel as well. Now, one of the very important provisions of this legislation is that it ends the inadmissibility bars. And let me briefly explain what those are. If someone is undocumented and came to the United States without inspection, and then that person is unlawfully in the US for between 6 months and 1 year, then that person is ineligible to receive immigration benefits for 3 years if that person leaves the US. If that unlawful presence in the US is in excess of 1 year, then that person is ineligible to receive immigration benefits for 10 years. Now, this applies to both people who came with inspection and without inspection. The problem is that a lot of people who are here undocumented, most of them live in mixed status families. And so when there is a process that is started to grant those people permanent residence, those who came here without inspection, most of them have to go back to their home country to apply for that status at the US Embassy abroad. So the minute that they leave, there is that inadmissibility bar that is triggered. Oh, and guess what? You're not eligible. So, they can apply for a waiver, but not everybody qualifies for a waiver. So this legislation would disappear, that bar. The bar will no longer exist. It also provides for applicants or people who receive this status to be able to travel outside the US. Many people who are undocumented have not seen their loved ones back home for many, many years. I mean, I have clients who haven't seen their parents for 20 years. So this would be a great thing. And then once people who are who apply for this kind of status under this provision have had this status for 5 years, then they can apply for permanent resident status. And then people who have had permanent resident status for 3 years, they will be eligible to apply for citizenship. And one of the good features of this legislation is that the spouses and children of applicants for lawful prospective immigrant status are also eligible to apply, even if they do not fulfill all the requirements. So they're all eligible to apply with the main applicant as well. Well, as I explained before, there is this, this prospective immigrant status for people who have been undocumented and who were here, effective January 1st of 2021. And then they have this status for 6 years, and then they can get permanent resident status. This legislation also provides for a special treatment of 3 groups of people. For people who are DACA eligible, for young people, and within that group, there are 2 subgroups, which is people who would be eligible for DACA and people who already have DACA. That's the second group that is eligible for this special treatment are people who are who have TPS or who have deferred DED, which is something that we really do not use that much here at Catholic Charities, and then people who are farm workers. So let's go through the first group of people who would be eligible for this expedited path to permanent residence. This legislation provides that people who are DACA eligible would be immediately eligible to apply for permanent residence, straight permanent resident status. So not the prospective immigrant status, but just permanent resident status. And this would be people who are younger than 18. So for those of you who do, work with immigrants and you might be familiar with the DACA requirements, so you will notice that the requirements for this are not the same as for DACA. These requirements are not as stringent as the requirements for DACA. So to be able to apply for this, they would have to be, 18 under 18 when they enter the U.S. to pass, all background checks, to have a high school diploma or served in the military for 2 years. Then there is some kind of way in which they need to demonstrate that they worked for 3 years, or they can replace some of that work with having been in school. They have to comply with selective service registration, which males over the age of 18 in the US need to comply with. And there are some waivers to those educational requirements. Here at Catholic Charities, I remember we have had clients with children who are disabled and who are unable to go to school or to complete the school. So this would benefit people who for some reason cannot finish school. And then also the spouses and children of qualifying applicants can apply for this immediate permanent resident, even if they don't have DACA, but if they are eligible for this. And then the second group of people who are immediately eligible to apply for permanent resident status would be people who already have DACA. And they need to be, have current DACA status and meet all the requirements to renew DACA. And then these people, after 3 years, can apply for citizenship. So after getting permanent resident status, they have this expedited path to citizenship. Then the second group that I mentioned that also will be eligible to apply for permanent resident status would be people who have TPS or DED. There are many people who are already in the US, who have been here for decades, literally, who have especially TPS, and they've been, they're in a limbo because they can work, but they don't have any way to obtain permanent resident in the future. So this would grant those people that ability. They need, again, to pass all background checks. They need to show that they've been continuously physically present in the US since January of 2017, and they had TPS, have TPS or DED, or were eligible to receive TPS or DED on that date, on January 1st of 2017. And the spouses and the children under 21 are eligible to adjust. And then there is another technicality about this provision that only perhaps there are a couple of lawyers out there listening to us, but would be that having TPS will be tantamount to being admitted in the US. So even if somebody came without inspection, if they have TPS, they will be treated as if they were admitted. And the third group of people who can or will be able to apply for permanent resident status under the new legislation would be people who work in agriculture. This was before my time, and it was before I came to the US. But during the Reagan administration, there was a kind of legalization program. The first one, really big one that we've seen, which legalized people who worked in the fields. So this looks to me like that, bringing that back. So it will be people who performed agricultural labor or services for at least 2,300 hours or 400 work days within the previous 5-year period. So I can see in the future, many people who are going to be, needing letters from employers, letters from farmers. We have many clients at Catholic Charities who work on farms, egg processing or farrowing with pigs, in small farms or even family farms. And these people would clearly qualify under this legislation, as would their spouses and children. Then, as I said before, the people who would be eligible for that for the prospective immigrant status also would include some people who were deported. The legal term is removed from the US. So the requirement would be that they had physical presence in the US for 3 years prior to them being deported, and that they were removed, non-citizen probably removed on or after January 1st of 2017. And then they could apply for a waiver for humanitarian reasons to ensure family unity, but they cannot illegally re-enter the US after January 1st of 2021. This new legislation also does away with some bars for adjustment of status, which is the act by which somebody goes from no status or temporary status to permanent residence. It changes some of the very punishing bars that we have right now, even for minor crimes. So it's, the bars for adjustment of status would be if somebody has 1 felony or 3 misdemeanors, and there are some, exceptions to that. Then somebody who was in lawful status as of January of 2021, let's say somebody who came here before January of 2021, but was on an H-1B visa or was on a tourist visa, then they were on unlawful status. So they wouldn't be able to apply under this act. And people who re-enter after being previously removed also would not be eligible. And people who departed the US subject to prior removal, voluntary departure, and re-entered after January of 1st of 2021 wouldn't be eligible either. Okay. So I am just, I'm just going to summarize this by saying that the final feature that I'm going to talk about is that people who are already have visas that are petitions that are pending and they are waiting for them to become current, that are in the family category, they will be eligible to use what is called a V visa to wait for their visa to become current in the United States, and they would be eligible to come here and to have also employment authorization. There are some changes to naturalization provisions. We, I think, short on time, but they would be, it would make the naturalization process, I think, more accessible to people, and we'll talk about that. And Jim talked about what they're doing in Central America right now, or what they're proposing, and this act will just codify what is happening right now, or what is about to happen in Central America when it comes to the U.S. Incentive for decreasing immigration from those countries in a legal way. And well, I think I talked about this already, but one of the great features is that the family-based immigration is supposed to be faster, and people are not going to be separated for long periods of time, and there will be more visas available in those categories. And finally, it does eliminate the one-year bar to asylum.
Okay, thank you so much, Miriam, for that overview. I know, so this proposed legislation, just so you know why Miriam really sped up through it, it's over 300 pages long, and we're trying to distill just the highlights of, I think, components that I think would be of interest to you all to know about, and hopefully in the future help us advocate to get this legislation passed. And so, which is a good segue for me to kind of talk about, well, how can you get involved? Really, and there are many ways in which you can get involved, right? To organize locally or statewide or nationally, and to speak up and to educate yourself and friends and neighbors and help fundraise and donate. So let's talk a little bit about what ways can you organize locally. There are many organizations here in the state of Iowa that serve or help immigrants already. We are one of those, as many of the other organizations that are represented even here today as attendees. Volunteer with one of those nonprofit agencies that are serving immigrants and refugees. Help tutor or serve as a tutor to help them prepare for citizenship or improve their English literacy skills. Help provide transportation for those that have transportation barriers, that cannot drive because, one, they don't have a driver's license, or they don't know how to drive, don't have access to a vehicle, right? Another component in which you might consider is maybe consider serving as a legal guardian for an unaccompanied child or youth that came here by themselves that may need a legal guardian in order for them to pursue immigration relief, right? And then lastly, if your community doesn't have an immigrant rights group, start one or join one. And luckily we've got technology so you can join and be part of a local or statewide or national organization that promotes immigrant rights. And so those are ways in which you can organize. And this is just, of course, examples. The second thing in which you can get involved, we really encourage you to advocate for comprehensive immigration reform, right? And this is what this U.S. Citizenship Act is supposed to be: comprehensive, humane, and really all-encompassing and holistic. And we know that it's really important for all of you to contact our senators, Senator Chuck Grassley and Senator Ernst. I've got their contact information here. Please contact them and advocate and encourage both senators to support the bill when it comes through. There are other bills that are right now pending, but we would want you to make sure that you contact and communicate with your legislators, particularly to these two senators, to encourage them to support comprehensive and compassionate immigration reform. Lastly, this is just a list of organizations that provide really reliable immigration information, including us. If you're not on our website or on our listserv to receive the newsletter, please sign on or ask us how you can subscribe. This list is not a comprehensive, exhaustive list, but a list that allows you to do additional research and educate yourself if you want to learn more about immigration. And of course, fundraising and donation to these organizations is huge to help them continue to do the work they do. Okay. Now, I know we've got a lot and there's just a few minutes, but I wanted to open it up to anyone who may have questions to unmute themselves and ask a question or put a question in the chat box, and we can help answer any questions that you may have. Before I do that, I just wanted to encourage you that we have our contact information. So if you are helping an immigrant refugee, or you know someone who is an immigrant refugee that would like to have a consultation with our Immigration Legal Services team, this is our contact information. We have 3 offices, physical offices, our Cedar Rapids office, our Waterloo office, and then Rye Meyer, who is in our Dubuque office. But again, we serve 30 counties in Northeast Iowa, so you can contact any one of these offices to get a hold of our legal assistant and schedule a free consultation for a patient or a client that you may be assisting with, or encourage them to contact our office. So I'll open up. Are there any questions, comments that anyone has? I don't see any questions here in the chat box, but if you have a question, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Maybe we did such a thorough job that maybe there are no questions. More than anything, there'll probably be a lot of, we don't know, we'll see what happens, right? So I think a question just came through here from Alex Baum from Dubuque says, do you know how additional funding is being considered for instituting these changes for immigration offices and lawyers on the federal level? That's a great question, Alex. And I actually don't know how they're going to find additional funding, but I would propose that funding will have to go through congressional actions for them to grant additional fundings for the federal offices like the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of State, and Department of Justice to be able to execute some of these executive orders or executive actions and memorandums that Biden is proposing. So with any federal changes, right, there's always usually a dollar attached to some of these changes. But most likely there's going to have to be congressional actions in order to have some of these changes be in effect. Great question. Any other questions?
Sir, this is Mary McCauley. I don't really have a question. I certainly thank the all the explanation that was given to us, but we know how complex everything is. And you emphasize advocacy. I would just encourage your office to send out to all of us who've been on this call different initiatives and actions that we might take when you see appropriate actions that could be taken for promoting immigration reform. It's so complex. If you could continue to serve as our leaders, I think we'd be grateful.
Thank you for that reminder, Sister Mary. We would definitely make sure. And so if you are not on our listserv for immigration updates, please contact myself or Megan Sandmeyer, who's our PR director. We'll make sure to add you on our email listserv distribution so that if there are changes, we'll make sure to include everyone that's interested in receiving an email from us. Any other questions? We've got 2 minutes left before we close out the webinar. I just want to thank you all for your time and attention. We know that this is an important issue and that you care about, because just by the sheer number of folks who have attended the webinar, I know that just as Jim and Miriam have indicated, the last few years have been sort of a whiplash. Every week, literally every other day, there are changes to immigration laws and rules. And we hope that in the future there will be changes, but I think hopefully positive changes that we can make sure to share with you all. A question from Carol, will a copy of the PowerPoint be available to those who attended? Yes, we will make a copy of the slides and recording available if you want to review it again, or if you have a colleague or a neighbor who was unable to make it today, but would like to hear the information, we'll make sure to share that with everyone. And any other pressing questions before we log off? It is 10:59. I just want to be respectful of folks' time. Okay. If there are no other questions, we want to say thank you for your attention and your time. And again, this is our contact information. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. It's so important. I can't stress enough that given this time, that we want to encourage people to go to qualified, accurate resources to get information. This time, it's just like in the last few years that individuals who even are well-intentioned, it's so important that you send them to us or any other immigration professional to make sure that they're being provided the best information and helping us to minimize the damaging effects of people who are engaging in unauthorized practice of law, especially immigration, because there are consequences, unfortunately, negative consequences if folks are not being navigated or advocated in the right way with respect to the immigration case. So again, encouraging to contact our office if you have any questions.